Hey guys, Maven here. Now, during my time in the WWE, I lost my fair share of matches, meaning I took my fair share of finishers, but not all finishers are created equal. Some hurt like the dickens, some not so much. So what we're gonna do today is rate the WWE finishers I took on this handy dandy tier list. Everything from barely feel it to I hate this job and everything in between. Now, let's relive some painful memories. First on the list, the power bomb. Now, I took power bombs from several different people, and honestly, everyone delivers it a little bit different. It all depends where you land. Now, early in wrestling training, they teach you how to bump, and what they're doing is teaching you how to disperse all your energy as evenly as possible when you land. Now, when someone's power bombing you, a lot of that is taken out of your hands, but you can still try to disperse that energy by slapping the mat, and you can still try to land as safely as possible. But when it goes bad, where you're gonna feel it is in your back and quite possibly your neck. And it does depend on who is delivering that power bomb on you. It's going to hurt, but if you're working someone who delivers you down safely, you know, it's gonna hurt a little bit less. But in the end, a power bomb is not named a feather bomb. It's still called a power bomb. So you know you're gonna feel it. And for that reason, I am putting it in the it hurts category. You know you're gonna feel it, but you also know you're gonna walk away from it. Next move on the list is the leg drop. And just like the power bomb, depends on who delivers it. I took some leg drops from Test, and Test was always pretty good at, even though he was an intense competitor, even though he looked like he was giving everything he had, he was always safe to work with. The leg drop is one of those moves that, knowing it was coming, I knew I almost had a night off. And the reason that the leg drop isn't a bad move to take is because whoever's delivering it, they're taking the brunt of the impact every time they land. And think about it, they're gonna be landing off kilt, off center. So their hips, their lower back is going to take all the impact. They're gonna absorb everything, and actually the person giving the move is gonna feel it a whole lot more than the person receiving the move. Now, I never took Hogan's leg drop. I don't know how his felt, but I do know the few leg drops I took, not too bad. And for that reason, it goes in the barely feel it category. Next on the list is the figure four. My brothers and I would actually give figure fours to each other growing up, so I knew how they felt going into it. The figure four is one of those moves that's actually based off of real life martial arts. So if you place the figure four and actually apply pressure, oh, it's going to hurt. You actually run the risk of breaking your leg. But we all know this is pro wrestling. This is a work. If the minute it's put on and the person giving it wrenches back and looks like they're applying as much pressure as humanly possible, and then the person getting it roused in agony, it looks like $1 million, when the whole time no pressure or minimal pressure is actually being applied. It's one of those rare moves that can hurt, can do damage, but if you're working with a professional like a Ric Flair, you barely feel it. I'm gonna put it in the noticeable but not bad category, and that's just because it's one of those moves that can hurt. Next on the list is similar to the power bomb. It's the choke slam. I took majority of my choke slams from Kane and also from Test as well. And both guys were amazing at making sure I walked away to perform another day. But in the end, gravity is something that, as predetermined as pro wrestling is, gravity could care less. For that reason, the choke slam, it hurts a lot. For the next move on the list, it's probably going to shock you. It's the frog splash. It looks like a move that might hurt, you might feel, but other moves might feel worse. Obviously, the choke slams, the power bombs, the moves where gravity is fighting against you, they naturally look more devastating. But let me tell you, when you're taking a frog splash, gravity is still not your friend. For the most part, anyone that's delivering a frog splash, they're gonna weigh upwards of 200 plus pounds. So while you're laying there, while you're vulnerable, while you're watching someone fly through the air 10, 15 feet away to bring down all of their weight on you, it's not a fun place to be. Factor into the equation that sometimes people might be off center. Sometimes people might miss their intended mark when landing. It just sucks to have a grown man come down with all of his force on you. But I also recognize that I was working with professionals, guys that knew no matter how extended they got when they came down, they were going to cup their body to relieve as much of the impact as possible. But it didn't matter. Sometimes this move, it hurt. During a Sunday night heat one time while I was wrestling Val Venus, and Val was amazing at delivering a frog splash. The sheer impact of his weight rebounded my head against the mat and actually gave me a concussion. So think about that. I got a concussion while laying on the mat from the frog splash. For that reason, the frog splash, I hate this job. Never looked forward to taking that one. Next on the list is the Swanton bomb. And everyone knows this was a Jeff Hardy move. Jeff was one of those wrestlers that would always put his body in peril before he would put your body in peril. The Swanton bomb echoed that perfectly. Jeff would get you down where he needed you. Didn't matter where he positioned you. Jeff was great at rotating his body. He was so athletic. And for that reason, I put the Swanton in the barely feel it category. Anytime the person giving the move is taking 90% of the risk, it's gonna hurt less. Next on the list is the spear or the gore. The spear is a good build-up move. It's one of those moves that the person taking it, me, would sell up and turn directly into it, but knowing that it's coming, you're actually able to brace yourself and brace for that impact. And going back to weight disbursement, taking those bumps that you've practiced thousands and thousands of times, it helps. It plays a part when taking the spear. It's one of those moves that you know you're gonna feel it, but I would say it's probably a 50-50 on who's gonna feel it more. The person actually given the spear, it's not a picnic for them either. But for that reason, I put it in the noticeable but not bad category. The next finisher on the list is arguably the most popular finish of all time. And I know right now in the comments you're thinking of all the other finishers that are more popular. Well, this is my list. Make your own channel. Come up with your own finisher list. But for me, the RKO is one of those finishers that it's iconic, but how is it to take? Randy is so effortless once he jumps to take flight. Once you see him jump and elevate, you simply guide his body, put your arms underneath his back to help him with height, help him with just the elevation, the floating in air. Then it's a simple face bump. Unlike the ones with the back bump, this is one of the few finishers where you're actually taking a face bump. And by face bump, I mean rather than landing on your back, you're landing on your face. It's a finisher that helped springboard his career to the superstar he is today. But how is it to take? I don't know how it would be to take from someone else. I never took something similar, a diamond cutter from DDP, but I've taken probably 50 RKOs between working on top televised shows and working non-televised shows. And for that reason, it too goes in the barely feel it category. Randy's a professional. Randy, again, to me, is on the Mount Rushmore. And when you're on Mount Rushmore, you know how to make your finisher look devastating while remaining safe the entire time. For our next finisher, we're dealing with an animal, a guardian, if you will, a guardian of our galaxy. Of course, I'm talking about Dave Batista's Batista Bomb. The Batista Bomb was perfect for Dave. Why? Because it truly showed his aggression. It was one of those moves, and as a power wrestler, Dave came in with one of the best physiques in the business. And when you have a physique that looks so devastating, you want a move that looks equally as devastating. The Batista Bomb did just that. But how did it feel? One night, I believe it was on Raw. I was wrestling Dave, and we were in Cleveland, Ohio. We had a special guest in the audience that night. That's right, LeBron James, in his first year in the league, was ringside. Dave and I actually worked close to him, and then that was the end of the fun night for me in that match. The Batista bomb that night, and I'm assuming Dave was amped up and Dave was excited, but when he delivered me to the mat, it was definitely one of those moves I felt. In general, this was a move I took many times from him, and he always delivered me safe. But again, when you're dealing with gravity, and then on top of that, dealing with gravity and the force from a extremely strong guy, I've had funner nights, let's just put it that way. The Batista bomb, I hate this job. Our next move on the list is the walls of Jericho. I was first put in this move during a championship match after my Royal Rumble episode with Undertaker. I never knew exactly how this move was going to feel. This was one of the moves that during my training and during developmental, that just never went into. So when Chris put this move on me that night, it was the first time I had ever been in it. I remember during the match, you actually see my face almost give up on life in general, and I was not selling. That was really how I felt. It was the only time in my life I have seen the bottom of my shoes from that angle while they're on my feet. But how did it feel? Well, I gotta be honest. Whenever I say something makes me want to give up on life in general, it goes in the "it hurts a lot" category. Wasn't one of those moves that made me hate the job, but definitely not something I was looking forward to ever taking again. For the next move on the list, it's one of those moves that it's actually hurt people in the past. Several people have injured their neck. I'm immediately thinking of Steve Austin. Going into a match when you know you're going to be taking this move, it's always in the back of your mind somewhere. But when The Undertaker is giving you a Tombstone pile driver, you got to put all your trust in him. The man, the phenom, you know, at least I knew I was going to be in safe hands. It was a move that truly was risky, but there's kind of a trick to it, and that is once you're inverted, once he has you and he's selling and the crowd's reacting, the secret for the person taking it is wrap your arms around and get a good grip, a good base, so when he goes down and his knees hit, you're actually supporting yourself and you're supporting your head from driving into the mat as well. I remember Taker telling me that. I remember taking my very first one and laying there and thinking, holy cow, I didn't hardly feel a thing. For that reason, the Tombstone pile driver is in the noticeable but not bad category. I can't in good conscience put it in the barely feel it category because others who have hurt their neck, they've felt it a lot more than I did. And for our next finisher on the list, we're talking about the super kick. Interesting fact about the super kick. On nights when Shawn Michaels was going to be on the card, you always knew that he was going to get the super kick in. It just was a staple of his, and it always looked so fluid and so perfect that they would actually have in Gorilla a sign up that stated no super kicks. Now, obviously, they didn't mean that for Shawn. They had that sign up protecting Shawn. They didn't want to see a single super kick. That way, when Shawn did deliver it, it was the first time anyone in that audience was going to be seeing it for the night. I took super kicks from other people, and I know Stevie Richards uses the Stevie kick. I actually took Stevie kicks from Stevie Richards. But how is it to take? This is one of the moves where simple inches can mean easy or getting your head kicked off. The night that Bret Hart took a similar style kick from Bill Goldberg that in essence ended his career. I was fortunate that I never had to take a kick like that, but I'm gonna give the move the respect it is due. And for that reason, it goes in the "it hurts" category. I'm happy whenever I see a super kick and I see that either a competitor puts his hand up to absorb that impact, or I'm just as happy to see when there's some air in between, because we've all seen what happens when there's not. And our next finisher on the list is the pedigree. Hunter was one of the only people I could wrestle for extended periods and I wouldn't blow up, meaning I wouldn't get as tired in the ring. That transcended to his moves as well. I barely felt anything when I was working Hunter, and he made everything look devastating. That's why he's the game. That's why he's one of the best to ever lace him up. The pedigree, I was actually always more worried about once he hooked my arms, one of my shoulders separating. I dislocated my right shoulder in developmental early in my training, and after I dislocated it, I had to wrestle Booker on SmackDown less than a week later, so I didn't tell anybody. Not telling anybody means I have this shoulder will pop out from time to time, and it's popped out just for doing stupid things, and I was always worried that whenever Hunter hooked it, maybe it was going to pop out. Never did, and I'll give him credit. The pedigree, it's noticeable, but not bad. You always run the risk when you're taking a face bump and you don't have your hands free to cushion your fall, but Hunter's a professional, and Hunter knows how to protect guys as they're going down. He always took great care of me, and for that, I thank you, Hunter. Our next finisher on the list is the DDT, and I know what you're saying. It's not a finisher anymore. Well, it should be. When I was growing up and when I was training, the DDT was a devastating move. Early in my career, when I was in developmental, HWA, the WWE's developmental program in Cincinnati at the time, Heartland Wrestling Association, I was wrestling in a tag match and against Lash LaRue. I don't remember who was in the other match. Lash hooked me, and when we went down for a DDT, he held on, and I spiked my head into the mat, and it was probably one of the first times that I had ever really had my bell rung. I don't know if I had a concussion that night. We didn't have medical on staff at the time, but it hurt. And for that reason, I still put the DDT in the category of a finisher. But how is it to take? Other than that one time it hurt, it's actually not too bad. So I put it in the noticeable, but not bad category. Our next finisher on the list quite possibly might be one of the most devastating looking finishers of all time. And I'm talking about Hardcore Holly's Alabama Slam. The moment he would hook someone's legs and you saw the pendulum style action and their body whipping around, it's obviously, again, force, gravity, a lot of things you have no control over, but you're still trying to land as safely as possible. Bob, aggressive competitor in there, wanted to make it look like he was slamming you, and he did. But he always landed me safe at least. But where does it go on my tier rating list? I never looked forward to taking it. I always felt it afterwards, so it goes in the hurts a lot category. One of those moves that you definitely felt a few hours after you left the ring with Bob. And for our final finisher on the list, if the RKO is, in my opinion, the most famous finisher of all time, I could make a strong argument, or I would at least listen to a debate about this one. We're talking about Steve Austin's Stone Cold Stunner. Simon Dean and I both took one in LA at Monday Night Raw the night after a WrestleMania. It's one of the only moves I can think of that people get more enjoyment watching how someone sells it than watching Steve do it. Some people would take it great, like The Rock, like Scott Hall, and then Vince McMahon. And everyone else is probably in between. But how is it to take? Well, I'm happy to announce the Stone Cold Stunner goes in the barely feel it category. And there you have it. There's my finisher tier list. But ironically, the worst injury of my career did not come off of any of those moves. It actually came off a move I had done for 17 years of my life. And to see that, click the link above.